Good evening and welcome to tonight's show. Our topic for tonight is a serious one. Um, it's something that I think about more often than maybe I would, could, or should. I don't know. Um, I think as we get older, we think more about death because we start to realize that I start to realize that I have um what's the term there's less road ahead than there is whatever is more road ahead, no, less road ahead than there. I've got more miles behind me than I do ahead of me. That's what I was trying to say. That's the phrase. I've got more miles behind me than I do ahead of me, something like that. I'm butchering the saying, whatever it may be. But death is one of those unavoidable things that we must all face, and it's something that we all go through alone. We come into this world alone, we leave this world alone, and it's something that is outside, like unbelievably outside of our control. There are some people who, I don't know if you want to call them, you might think that they're courageous, you might think that they're foolish. I'm not going to judge them personally, especially the people that who have done it for reasons of their life literally being cut it short. I'm thinking of people that cryogenically freeze themselves in hopes that someday they could be brought, in hopes of someday whatever is ailing them can be fixed by science, that science can A, resurrect them, and then B, cure them of whatever ails them. And that's assuming that their body can be preserved long enough. And there was a very sad story about a woman in her late 20s who had an inoperable brain tumor, and she opted, instead of living out her life or trying to fight it, and whatever, she decided that she rather freeze herself and hope that she could continue her life on in the future. It was a really sad story. It actually made me it made me well up, made me tear up a lot. I cried a little bit. I felt really bad for this woman. That is a tough hand to be dealt in life. And, especially when you feel so powerless. I can't imagine how powerless. I mean, we already feel powerless, that we're all, we all have this thing that we can't avoid. But the idea that that there's this chance, even if it's like a tiny chance. And we did a whole episode about cryogenics and how archaic they are, and they're not very, freezing the body is not it's not a well honed skill. It's really bad, actually. And you can't really freeze a body very well and keep it preserved. The bodies that are frozen, they get damaged in insane ways, some of which are beyond any kind of repair, outside of, I don't know, who knows, man. And yet people go through with this. Some of them do it when they die, right? Some people do it when they die. Some people do it when they know they don't have a lot of time left. Some people do it when they have, things like cancer, like this woman. I can't remember her name, but it was a very sad story. Which brings us to today's topic. Is it possible? Is resurrection possible? Is it possible to bring the dead back to life? Is death reversible? Okay. I've written a whole screenplay about this. It's called My Shadow, and it's actually going to be my next film. That's not why we're covering it, but just to let you know how much I've, not thought about resurrection as much as I think about death. I think about what is death? What is life? What is consciousness? I think about consciousness a lot. And consciousness obviously plays a key, it's a key factor in all of this. But learning about cryonics or cryogenics, or whatever you want to call them, was terrifying. It was a terrifying notion because these people they jump into the unknown and they destroy their bodies in the process, and they, have this hope that they're going to come back somehow. And it just seems like it's impossible. And I guess, listen, we're not going to end this episode, or even, I don't know if we're going to come up with any kind of answer, right? Um, but we're just going to explore the notion: resurrection. Is it possible? Researchers catalog all the ways that science may achieve it. So the key word here, and this is from one of my favorite websites, Big Think, and it's written by Stephen Johnson, and it's from September 22nd, 2020. Researchers catalog the ways that science may achieve it. May being the key word here, okay? May, because it may not even be possible. It may not be possible in the way that we think that it's possible. Part of the problem here, before we even get started, part of the big problem here is we don't fully understand life and death to begin with. Sure, we understand what life is and the state of being alive, and we've sort of categorized that. We also categorize kind of like what death is, but we don't fully understand them. We don't have a full grasp. And it's the same thing with consciousness. We sort of have an understanding of what consciousness could be, but we can't nail that down. Nobody can. I mean, they've tried. There are some really interesting theories about how, like, quantum mechanics, like quantum science, is connected to consciousness. And it's this idea that, like, inside of our brain, we have these tubules that connect our consciousness on a quantum level. Whereas when our meat skeletons die, or whatever you want to call it, or our meat bodies die, that our consciousness leaves the body and goes elsewhere. Where to? I don't know. I have my own theories about what, consciousness is. Because, like I said, I think about this all the fucking time. It's probably the thing I think about more than anything else, in terms of like fear and anxiety driven thought. Hi, we have Angus is here. Hi, Angus McCorder. It is very interesting. I like talking about this. I like thinking about this. I don't like thinking. I do. I think about this stuff. And that part of me has this fear of, like, you shouldn't talk about these things. Like, it's the evil eye. Hamza, Hamza, Hamza. Don't talk about death. Just be grateful that you're alive and leave it at that. And then there's this other part of me that's like, no, I have to talk about it. And that's why I wrote about my new movie. That movie I've been talking about, My Shadow, the next feature I'm going to be doing, is all about my anxieties of death and the great beyond and this, that, and the other. So again, consciousness, like, what is consciousness? My idea of consciousness is almost like the place wherever creativity comes from, the divine creativity that flows through us. I think that is connected to consciousness somehow. And that's the only way that my human brain can really wrap its head around it. So again, to go back to this notion of, hey, we don't fully understand life. We don't fully understand death. We don't fully understand consciousness. And we have these human brains that give us some kind of grasp to an extent, but in the same way that an ant is never going to understand the internet, so forth, perhaps us as human beings are never going to understand truly what it means to be conscious, and it's just one of those things, man. It's just one of those things. I think that I also believe this. I believe that if we were able to do it, or if we're able to do it, then it will be done, right? That kind of thing. If we figure out how to fly, we're going to fly. If we figure out, so like, that's the other piece of this too. Angus says, my anxiety of death is much less, especially being at my age, 60. Angus, would you elaborate on that a little bit further for me, please? I'm very curious. Why is that? By the way, I'm speaking on this subject as a 38-year-old. And my views on this subject are very different from when I was 28 or even 20 years old or even 18, where it seemed like such a faraway concept, such a faraway destination that, we have our whole lives ahead of us. And then the years get faster and faster and faster. And, what we're talking about right now is we're just talking about the concept of death, which at times, I'm not saying all the time, but at times is a paralyzing fear where I feel like I am involuntarily being pushed off a cliff and I can do nothing to stop it. We're all being pushed off a cliff and we can't, it's kind of like, you never seen the movie 300 when the Greeks are pushing the Persians into the water, and there's just the Greeks are just too powerful for the Persians, and they're running out of runway, and they fall, and there's nothing that can be done to stop it. And that's kind of how it feels sometimes, and so then comes this notion of, could we extend our lives? Is it possible to bring people back from the dead? And if we can bring people back from the dead, will we bring people back from the dead? And I think the answer is, if we can, I think eventually we will. And I think it will be in the same way that you have the pro-life, pro-choice argument. I think there will be a pro-life, pro-choice argument for bringing people back from the dead, in the same way that you currently have, people who want to take their lives into their own hands, if you know what I mean. Can't say this word on the internet. Like, for instance, that girl, I think she was in the Netherlands. The girl was 28 years old and was like, I have a type of depression that I cannot cure, and I want to be euthanized. And she was euthanized. Perfectly physically healthy person who was just so depressed, did not want to, be conscious anymore, in that, if you know what I mean. And picked a date in late May, and she went through with it. She's gone. She's not here anymore. It's hard to wrap my mind around that kind of thing. And so if it's possible to do something like that, to assist somebody in that kind of way, I have to imagine that if there was a way to assist someone in coming back, that it could be done. And obviously you have many factors that go into this. What is the state of the person? How did they die? What is their, what are they like? What's the state of their body? That's one aspect of it. And the other aspect, again, I was just saying, we don't understand life, death, and consciousness. I feel like if you are going to solve any problem, you first have to understand fundamentally what these things are inside and out. How could you possibly solve the problem if you don't know what the problem is to begin with? And in order to know what the problem is, you have to know fundamentally what is death and what happens after death, what is consciousness and where consciousness goes, and what it is to be alive. And if you can understand those three concepts inside and out, and you have the technology, then you can bridge the gap and solve the problem, right? Everybody with me so far on this? Mom Longoria says, resurrection, Victor Frankenstein. Well, I mean, that's the ultimate, right? I mean, isn't that the ultimate resurrection? I guess besides Jesus. I guess next to Jesus, the ultimate resurrection was Frankenstein's monster. Not really resurrection. That's birth. That's creating life from death. Angus says, I seem to have more friends that I lose every year. I cannot stop it, so I have to accept it. I mean, that's the thing too. The longer you're around, the more, I mean, generally speaking, there are some people who have the experience of losing a lot of people when they're very young. But for most of us, I'd say the average general experience, maybe if you're like in America, I don't want to speak for someone in another country where, there's some countries where life is a lot cheaper, or the life is easily taken a lot easier than it is in other places. Although some might argue the same for us, because, again, I don't want to get political here with guns and whatnot, but if you think about what happens in schools randomly at random, and there's a great movie that deals with the allegory of that, called Spontaneous Combustion. I watched this movie, Spontaneous Combustion. Check it out. No, it's called Spontaneous. It's just called Spontaneous. It came out in like 2010s. like maybe like 2018. And when I watched it, I was like, it was just kids. They just start exploding in school. Like there's just no, and I was like, oh my God, this is about that. Like the random acts of violence that occur in our schools, you know? So some might argue that life is cheap over here too. Who knows? Who friggin' knows, man? Angus says eternally living versus a limited life could be an economic issue. Absolutely. Of course that comes into play, right? That then this brings about a bunch of other problems because part of life and death, life exists because of death and death exists because of life, right? Like they both kind of are tandem with each other. You need death in order to have life, right? And you need life in order to have death. I mean, you look at look at dirt. Like think about dirt. Dirt exists and is such a necessary thing that we have on our planet because things die and then they decompose and then they turn into the ground and then things grow out of the ground. You know what I mean? Like it's so crazy. The cycle. Like we can understand some of these things those are very simple kind of, relatively speaking, those are simpler concepts that are easier to understand and explain. It gets a lot more complicated when you have human beings, right? Human beings, because of our consciousness, because of we are self-aware to an extent, I should say, it makes things more complicated. It's not so cut and dry, you know? Before we dive further into the reading here, let's take a minute to talk about our sponsor, Riot Stickers. Riot Stickers, in matters of life and death and resurrection, you might need Riot Stickers. We have a special deal. We're doing 200 stickers for $69. You can get die cut stickers. Those are stickers in any sort of shape. So if you wanted stickers in the shape of a tombstone or a coffin, you could get those done because you use a computer guided scalpel to make any kind of shape that we want. And for $69, you can get 200 of those stickers when you go to riotstickers.com/Frumess. That's FRUMESS. So do not hesitate. Go there today. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Let's go to the little, the commercial, and then we will be right back to discuss whether resurrection is possible.
Posters and promo cards, there's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. We are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
And that is a promise. Okay, let's dive into it, shall we? Key takeaways. Obviously, I'm going to butcher a lot of names here because I don't know how to read. But that's just the way it goes. Alexei Turchin and Maxim Chernyakov, researchers belonging to the transhumanism. What is transhumanism? It means to, I guess it means to ascend what it is to be human, to go from being human to being something else. The transhumanism movement wrote a paper outlining the main ways technology might, keyword might, because we don't really know, might someday make resurrection possible. The methods are highly speculative, ranging from cryogenics to digital reconstruction of individual personalities. Surveys suggest most people would not choose to live forever if given the option. Okay, let us begin. There's no evidence of an afterlife, but there's also no proof that medical death is the end of subjective experience, or that death is irreversible or immortality impossible. Because ultimately, when we talk about resurrection, we are also talking about the possibility immortality in some sort of way, which again, when you think about these concepts of resurrection, especially a concept of immortality, is anything really truly eternal and immortal? Some would argue the soul. I would like to hope, I want to believe, because I'm scared, I want to believe that my consciousness lives on, even if I do not. And some would, Eastern thought believes that we're one big ocean of consciousness and that we're just like drops. We're inside of these bodies. We are drops of consciousness, experiencing the human condition, right? We're experiencing the human condition. And therefore, when we return to the source, we're met. We're not alone on the other side. We're all joined together, and that's why all of this, feeling so different, this different, having this sort of this idea of difference, or that we're not different, that we're all the same, and that if there is a creator or whatever is up there, it's some sort of cosmic joke that we even, that we treat each other the way that we treat each other, because we're all the same thing. We're all one giant super organism, each having our own experience. And maybe that's why, when people try to, contextualize, why do bad things happen, or why do some people get to live long, fruitful lives while others don't, and why do the good die young, and why do the bad turn old, and all this and that. And maybe the reality is, again, with our limited understanding, we don't understand that we're all part of the same thing. We're all playing on the same team, and therefore it's inconsequential which one of us, in the same way that we pluck fruit from a tree and we know that the fruit is going to be okay, or that the tree is going to be okay. We're just taking the fruit, but we're not taking the whole tree. You know what I mean? Because it's all connected. Everybody's on the same team in that kind of way. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting too. Here's another little piece. And this baked my noodle. This baked my noodle so bad. This is from Reddit. This might scare the shit out of you. The way it kind of scared me, but I'm going to pause the reading right here because we have to talk about this. This is from Reddit in the existentialism Reddit, and this is from someone named Mass Gumption. They wrote this 3 months ago in response to dying is terrifying and I hate it. So someone wrote about how they are really scared of dying, and this was the response. And man, I friggin' dug this. And someone responded below, "Hey, I'm not going to sleep tonight. Here's what was said. Actually, I think it's impossible to die since we are experiencing machines that only experience. You can't switch off our consciousness since the lack of it cannot be experienced. When you sleep, if not for dreams, the next second you wake up. The same can be said of dying. However, Alan Watts puts it more clearly." So think about that for a minute. The idea that death is not possible because we experience, and therefore if you switch off our consciousness, we simply are not experiencing. But it's not excruciating or painful, because we're just off. Which is also terrifying to me. This is how Alan Watts puts it more clearly. When you die, you're not going to have to put up with everlasting non-existence because it's not an experience. And that's where we have trouble with, trying to nail down what consciousness is. A lot of people are afraid that when they die, they're going to be locked up in a dark room forever, myself included. Try to imagine what it would be like to go to sleep and never wake up. And if you think long enough about that, it will pose the next question. What was it like to wake up after having never gone to sleep? That was when you were born. You see, you can't have an experience of nothing. So after you're dead, the only thing that can happen is the same experience, or the same sort of experience as when you were born, which is both comforting and utterly fucking terrifying. And I hate that. I hate this like idea. I don't want to believe this. Like, in my heart, I have a feeling that there's probably some, at least the way that my brain can possibly like comprehend this stuff, I guess that's as close as we're going to understand it. I don't want to believe that that's true. I want to believe that there's more. But at the same time, I feel like logically I can't understand more than that, you know? Back to the article. In fact, some researchers believe immortality isn't just possible, but inevitable. Alexei Turchin, an author, life extensionist, and transhumanist researcher from Moscow, believes that artificial intelligence will eventually become so powerful that humans will be able to download themselves or the quantifiable information contained in their brains into computers and live forever. But here's the question. Here's the thing about that. I do believe if we are going to have some kind of resurrection, it will come from AI. Here's the thing about AI that's terrifying and exciting, and why it's kind of the precipice for technology in the future. AI essentially, I heard, I work in a school. That's my day job. I work in a school. And I work in a school and I do things for a school. And what's interesting is I heard a student in a school talk about how AI, ChatGPT, they were talking about. ChatGPT is kind of like a calculator. That's how you have to think about it. It is a tool that can enhance our thinking power and give us, in the same way that calculators allowed us as human beings to calculate all sorts of insane numbers, right? AI will do that in a way that we can't even possibly comprehend. Because here's the thing, with AI, we don't have to invent time travel. With AI, we don't have to invent resurrection. With AI, these supercomputers with quantum thinking power, that when you hook up an AI to a quantum computer, right, that can do quadrillion calculations in seconds, all of a sudden you have a thinking machine that can solve all these little individual problems for you. Again, taking their consciousness out of the equation and what they might want out of the equation, because again, we don't know if AI can truly find consciousness, and if it can, will it align with what we want? That poses its own problem. But the notion is, okay, remember those three questions I said before? What is life? What is death? What is consciousness? You plug those into a AI of whatever superpowered AI that will exist very, very soon. And suddenly the AI is figuring these things out for you. So while you're looking at each piece of the problem, okay, first problem, we need to understand what these things are. Second problem, how can we keep the consciousness, or is there a way, if consciousness is something that can be collected after death, can we extract consciousness, put it back into the living vessel, and then bring that body back to life? How do we do that? And that AI figures out each one of these pieces like a puzzle. And eventually that's how you wind up with the reanimation machine, where you could put a body into a machine, and whatever science that is beyond my understanding, that beautiful science fiction rule from what's his face, the guy Arthur C. Clarke said this: if it cannot be, whatever's beyond scientific understanding must be considered magic. And so science that's that advanced must be considered magic on some kind of level, right? So, he goes into the machine, blah, 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 and voila, here we are. We're back, or people are back. And now, but then comes questions of society, questions of all sorts of things. Why are people coming back to life? Why are we bringing people back to life? What is criteria that need to be met for people to be brought back to life? Like, there's all that to consider too. And that will create a whole slew of problems or whatever. I don't know. And then there's this other thing they're saying here: quantifiable information contained in their brains into computers and live forever. Is that truly a person? Would that be considered resurrection? Is that some kind of pseudo immortality? If someone makes a copy of me, is it me too? Can't I only be myself? I feel like, and that's the problem they say with transferring consciousness is such a singular experience that's directly tied to the human body. It's like you can't you can't separate the two. It turns into a whole thing. They say it'll take a long time to develop that technology, anywhere from 100 to 600 years, according to Turchin. But, here's my counter to that. And obviously these guys are way smarter than me, but I'm just a friggin' idiot talking on the internet, right? But like, again, going back to the idea, if you have super powered AI computers, maybe it would take 100 to 600 years for human minds with advanced stuff. But the AI, you're going to be able to go to AI, figure out how to time travel. AI, figure out how to, do this. AI, figure out how to do that. AI is going to figure it out. And then we're going to have the answers, right? The development of AI is going rather fast, but we are still far away from being able to download a human into a computer. But you see, I don't think you can you can't truly download a human into a computer. You can download a copy of a human into the computer, but I would imagine it would be like a photograph or a video, but one level. If a photograph or a video is a 2D construct, excuse me. Woo! If a photograph or a video is like a 2D construct of a human being, I would imagine that, a copy of a brain that you can interact with would be something along the lines of like 4D, right? 4 dimensions or 5 dimensions, like some crazy different dimensional level. This is where I think it gets a little silly. They're coming up with these weird guesstimates. If we wanted to do it with a good probability of success, then count on the year 2600 to be sure. Yeah, like you really fucking know that. Come on, man. Who knows? We are the AI is moving so goddamn fast. It's moving faster than we could possibly imagine. It's scary how fast it's moving. There's a good chance that my generation, I'm a millennial, there's a good chance that my generation could possibly, finish out their twilight years on the surface of Mars. I truly believe that. Or beyond, that my kids or my grandchildren could be a generation that leaves the solar system, that goes to Alpha Centauri. Why? Because that AI has figured out how to punch a hole through the time space and allows us to go through a wormhole or bend space time around a spacecraft. You think about that. You know what the idea is behind space time? They talk about this in Interstellar and stuff. It's the idea, like the ship, I guess, itself is not even actually moving. The ship creates some sort of energy field or whatever that warps time and space around it and allows it, I guess it does move, but allows it not to be slowed down or inhibited by time and space, allowing it to move a lot freer, I guess, at the speed of light. I don't know. This is where I'm going outside of my intelligence level. I could be totally off with that. That might be out of reach for modern humans, but downloading yourself onto a computer is just one potential route to immortality. In 2018, Turchin and Maxim of the Russian transhumanist movement wrote a paper outlining the main ways technology might someday make resurrection and therefore immortality possible. The paper defines life. You see, here's the thing. So the paper has to define what life is. And this is what the paper define, or part of the problem is, what is life? Here, the paper is defining what life is. Life is a continued stream of subjective experiences, and death is the permanent end of that stream. A continued stream of subjective experiences, and death is the permanent end of that stream. Immortality to them is a life stream without end, and resurrection is the continuation of that same stream of experiences after an arbitrarily long gap. Whew, that is so, that I can't even wrap my mind around that. Another key clarification is the identity problem. Here's what I was talking about. How would you know that a downloaded copy of yourself was really going to be you? It wouldn't. That's the problem. We are tied to these vessels. We are tied to this. This is us. This is us. We are this. So you can make a copy of my mind, but it's not going to be me. There's a great episode of Black Mirror about this, by the way. Couldn't it just be a convincing yet incomplete and fundamentally distinct representation of your brain? I think that's exactly, in my personal opinion, I think that's what it would be. If you believe that your copy is not you, that implies that you believe that there's something more to your identity than the currently quantifiable information contained within your brain and body, according to researchers. I do. I think, again, I go back to like the idea of like consciousness and like the idea of like creativity and the idea of connection with other people, like the notion of, like, again, this is going to sound really sappy, but I think about stuff like love too. I think about love as a concept. I think about it in scientific terms. And the idea that maybe love, this, and if you've ever been in love, have any of you ever been in love out there? Love is, in my mind, in the most simplest terms, you could say that love is the appreciation for someone or something else, right? But the reality, love is a feeling that almost cannot be defined. It's just a feeling that defies all logic, a pulling, a magnetism. And I think personally that love is a human perception of quantum connection. The idea that you could be distantly far from someone that you are quantumly connected to in some unexplainable way. And what draws you to them and what draws them to you is love, or like quantum connection. So that when you're feeling, and maybe even to an extent that when you're feeling sad, they might be feeling sad, or you might be feeling sad because they're feeling sad somewhere, that it's literally linked like that. I don't know. And what makes me believe that that's real, besides the fact that I haven't I don't know if I've ever experienced that. I don't know if I've been sad because someone else has been sad, quantumly, but just the idea of feeling deep connection or feeling a deep magnetism, a deep pull towards another person that's so unexplainable, that shouldn't make sense, that defies all logic. And then, but you always finish the sentence with, and yet. And that to me is something that is outside of what they're saying, like this stuff that they're saying. So I believe in that. And I believe in, again, the thing about creativity. I don't think creativity is something that's inherent within us. I do believe that beautiful sort of Greek model of the divine entering into you and inspiring you to then go forth and create. You don't have these ideas that formulate in your head, that creativity. It's got to come from somewhere. It comes from somewhere else. Kind of like, the Flash comic books is, oh God, this is really, we're out there. This is, man, I'm loving this though. I love shit like this. I love talking about this stuff. It's kind of like the Flash. You know how the Flash is connected to the Speed Force and he can run really fast because of the Speed Force. I believe there's the consciousness is like that too. And to an extent, like love is one of these super highways, invisible. We can't, and I don't know. So to me, these things, they connect to what I would qualify as something more than just my mind and my body. It's my soul. So there's another element here that we don't know or can't explain, but people have been talking about the soul for hundreds of years, thousands of years, probably hundreds of thousands of years. In the same way that we talk about the mind, we know that the mind exists, but we can't see it, right? I know that my mind exists because I'm self-aware. So what's to say that the soul can't exist either, right? So, and the point is that, again, to bring it back to resurrection, all of these things come into play if you're truly bringing someone back from the dead. Because if you don't have all of these things in the equation, then you're just reanimating someone, or you're just like, you're not truly bringing someone back from the dead, So again, if you believe that your copy is not you. That implies you believe that there's something more to your identity than the current quantifiable information contained within your brain and body. So like love and creativity, these are things that I think that make you partially, and that are not things that you can. How do you resurrect that? Does that stuff just automatically, is it like Wi-Fi? Does it just automatically reconnect if you reconnect the body to the mind to the body? I don't know. Who knows? In other words, your informational identity does not constitute your true identity. I think that's true. I think the informational identity and the physical identity, my body and my mind, these are the only things that our human brains can like truly, tangibly comprehend. Like we can comprehend those things, right? We can comprehend those things because we can kind of see them, or we can feel them, or quantify them, and so we can qualify them in some way. I can qualify my body very easily. I can qualify my mind to a lesser extent, but of course I can qualify my mind. But everything else, the soul, love, creativity, these things are harder to nail down. But they're concepts that either link me to another person or make me more than maybe what I am. In this scenario, there must exist what researchers call non-informational identity character, an NIIC. This could be something like a soul. It could be a qualia. I've never heard that word qualia. Let's look it up. Qualia means the eternal and the subjective component of sense perceptions arising from stimulation of the senses by phenomena, which are the unmeasurable. So the soul and the qualia are unmeasurable. Subjective experiences which could be unique to every person, or maybe doesn't exist at all. And that's true. Everything I just said, the thing about love, the thing about consciousness, the thing about all that stuff may not even be fucking real. It may not even be real. We ultimately don't know. It's no matter. The researchers say that resurrection in some form should be possible in either scenario. If no soul exists, resurrection is possible via information preservation. That's very true. So, okay, so now they're doing like if this is some sort of logic puzzle, right? If souls exist, resurrection is possible via returning of the soul in a new body. So you would have to somehow capture the soul. If no soul exists, then you just simply need to, preserve the information. But some forms of NIIC are also very fragile and mortal, like continuity, the researchers noted. The problem of the nature of the human identity could be solved by future super intelligent AI. But for now, it cannot be definitively solved. So that goes back to what I said at the very beginning of this episode. 3 questions. What is consciousness? What is life? What is death? If we don't have those answers, then we can't solve the problem. The problem cannot be solved. This means that we should try to preserve as much identity as possible and not refuse any approaches to life extension and resurrection, even if they contradict our intuitions about identity, as our notions of identity could change later. I like that. I like the idea that like we're not staying rigid here. We're going to allow ourselves to have open enough minds. Hey, maybe we don't know everything. And I really truly do not think that we have any fucking idea of what we are. We have some idea. We have our human intelligence, up to what our human intelligence can comprehend. But there are things beyond human intelligence, beyond our comprehension, that we simply just don't realize. And again, the way that I scale this, I always think about ants. I think about everything that I know that an ant does not. And yet we are both tangible, corporal beings that coexist and live together. Ants are unaware of me. I'm fully aware of them. I could destroy them with my breath, with a flick of my finger, with a stomp of my foot. Or I could save them. I could do all sorts of things. So to an ant, I have godlike powers and understanding and reasoning. And then what is to say that that we do not, that there is not something else, right? That there's not something else that looks at us, that looks at us as ants, and then when people think that God works in mysterious ways, could it be that in the same way that if you care enough for an ant, and here's the thing, I'll tell you this, I will tell you this, there are so many times, I care for ants, I care for insects, when I see them, I could smush them if I wanted to, and I don't, it's not that I love them either. I see the opportunity to help something smaller than me where it's within my grasp to do so, right? And I'm going to do it. And that ant has no idea. That ant has no fucking idea how it didn't, fall into that boiling water or something. That's just a crazy example. You know what I mean, though? So, like, when people talk about experiences, near-death experiences, the wind saved me, this saved me. Who's to say that there's not something looking out for them? I don't know what that thing is, but in the same way that an ant doesn't know what the internet is, right? So, are you following me with the scaling thing? Because that's important. All right. So these guys outline seven broad categories of potential resurrection methods ranked from the most plausible to the most speculative. The first category includes methods practiced while the person is alive. Like we did, again, if you have not watched our episode, I did an episode on cryogenics. First, horrifying. Absolute cryonics are fucking horrifying. Freezing yourself, terrifying. And the horror that comes of the human body, mucus plugs, just disgusting things that happen as a result of cryonics. Plastination. I've never even heard of plastination. Let's see what plastination is. Plastination. Since the invention of plastination in 1977, Gunther von Hagens continuously enhances his method today. Plastination is I don't know what that is. Plastination. We gotta hold on. We gotta deviate for a second to find out what the hell plastination is. Oh, holy shit. All right. Here, let's go here. So this is what plastination is. I've said that there's a museum of these guys. I'm terrified to see this museum, by the way. Plastination is a technique or process used in anatomy to preserve bodies or body parts. First developed by Gunther von Hagens in 1977, the water and fat are replaced by certain plastics, yielding specimens that can be touched, do not smell or decay, and even retain most processes of the original sample. Is this not fucking terrifying? That was a real human being. That was a person. These are people. This was a person who went to kindergarten. See this person? They went to kindergarten. They had a third grade teacher. They went to summer camp. They worked a job. They might have had children. And now look at them. This is what they end up as. Is this fucking crazy? Oh my God, is that fucking insane? Sorry. All right. We're back to this. So you have cryonics, plastination, and preserving brain tissue through processes like chemical fixation. The researchers noted that there have been suggestions that colostrum, hypothalamus, or even single neuron, or even a single neuron correlate of. Hold on, let me take that again. The researchers noted that there have been suggestions that the colostrum, hypothalamus, or even a single neuron is the neural correlate of consciousness. So it may be possible to preserve just that part of a person and later implant it into another organism. Meaning that you could take somebody's fucking brain and stick it into a goddamn cyborg, which is also, literally you have RoboCop. Like, that's scary. Other methods get far stranger. For example, one method includes super intelligent AI that uses a Dyson sphere to harness the power of the sun. You know what a Dyson sphere is? It's this big mechanical sort of exoskeleton that goes around the sun and harvests its enormous amounts of energy. And there are different like levels of like civilizations, and like a level 7 civilization uses Dyson spheres. And the reason why people the reason why people say, the reason why people or why astronomers or whoever scientists believe that level 7 civilizations exist is because we see these blinkings. As a matter of fact, we see these blinkings in astronomy or something, like there's like pulses of like these distant stars, and they're done in these mathematical sort of intervals that could only mean that they were mechanical or something, and therefore most likely were Dyson spheres. It's crazy shit. So they're saying, for example, one method includes super intelligent AI that uses a Dyson sphere to harness the power of the sun to power enormous calculation engines that would reconstruct people who collect a sufficient amount of data on their identities. So the idea here is it's still very abstract, right? Like we need an enormous amount of power, and we need an enormously powerful computer. And with these two things, if we can build them, then we let them do all the mumbo jumbo comes from them. So they figure out, they calculate things that human brains aren't even capable of understanding. The only thing that we're capable of understanding is we want you to make that dead person alive, right? Here's a map for the resurrection of the dead. I don't know how well you can see this. Kind of, I'll make myself a little bit smaller. Will that make that a little bit bigger? So you have a spectrum of plausibility, and I guess this is, I don't know what is, all right. So you have up here, you have prepared while alive, cryonics, plastination, digital immortality restoration based on recordings, and restoration from a digital backup. I think those are probably what they consider to be the most. Yeah, it says plausibility. The arrow goes up, not down. So this is the most plausible based on, science and technology that we understand. Next is reconstruction by an AI. I actually think that is the most plausible. And then you have different kinds, and I can't read the writing is here. Let me see if I can open this in a new tab. And man, that's kind of annoying. Here, I'm going to pull this down so I can see if I really can't read it. All right. Reconstruction based on traces. This is the Kardashev 3 AI. Reconstruction based on traces, super archaeology, and resurrection simulation. I can't read this. It's too blurry. The level 5 is total reconstruction of an all possible principle using some. Wow. It's fucking insane. And then you have new world models. So that includes new physics, new informational traces, parallel world, and simulations. The idea of you go to a parallel world and bring someone back from there. Use of quantum immortality, universal problem solver based on quantum immortality. Quantum immortality improves chances of cryonics, eternal return. So the idea is with quantum immortality, you could resurrect someone who froze themselves, right? And then you have partial resurrection, reconstruction based on the expectations of relatives. The same DNA-based clone. I'm surprised cloning has not really come into conversation yet. I feel like cloning is somewhere in the sphere, right? Then you have transformative resurrection, which is transformation paired with social transformation. I can't read this. I want to say it. Maybe it has something to do with robots. It sucks that it's so blurry. I can't see this. And then the last one is transcendental resurrection, physical resurrection according to God's will. So I guess that's the, that's like the Jesus stuff, right? To an extent. Fucking interesting as fuck, man. The main idea of a resurrection simulation is that if one takes the DNA of a past person and subjects it to the same developmental condition, as well as correcting the development based on some known outcomes, it's possible to create a model of a past person, which is very close to the original. But key word, very close to the original, but not the original. It's not the original, right? So it doesn't really click. Here, I'm going to go to the comments for a second. I see the comments have built up a little bit. JH says, I think we're supposed to reincarnate. It's possible. Hey, you never know. You never know. Zombies. You might come back as a zombified version of yourself with this reanimation stuff. That's possible. John of Doom says those creative ideas are at the level of the brain. No, we already, this is, now it's looping for some reason. Sorry. My guinea pigs. What is this? My guinea pigs think I'm a cool dude. That's right. Amy's here. Amy is finally catching a live stream. Glad to have. Thanks for the skulls, Amy. And Aaron, thank you for the skulls as well. Chuck B says there's an episode of Star Trek about how primitive societies perceive their technological superiority as godlike powers. That's what we were talking about. Like, it's like Thor on Asgardian technology is magic to human beings, right? Alberto says we are alive. That's what matters. Live on forever with your legacy. Do good onto others with positive vibes. Greetings to all this evening. Well said. Alberto's heard of those pulses. Love can last forever to infinity and beyond. Aaron brings up cloning. DNA samples of most people who live in the past 1 to 2 centuries could be extracted via global archaeology. Wow. So people from the 1800s and 1900s, after the moment of death, the simulated person is moved into some form of the afterlife, perhaps similar to his religious expectations, where he meets his relatives. So the idea that, oh my God, this is so fucking crazy. All right, now imagine for a second that this exists. Imagine for a second that people in the 1800s who talk, Christians or Jews or Muslims or whoever, talking about heaven, and in reality, that heaven that people have been to, or, in the near-death experiences, is just the fucking computer simulation based on their beliefs by fucking future humans. Oh, that's so fucking crazy. Are you following that? Like that, I can't even wrap my mind around that. Delving further into sci-fi territory, another resurrection method would use time travel technology. If there will at some point be technology that allows travel to the past, then our future descendants will be able to directly save people dying in the past by collecting their brains at the moment of death and replacing them with replicas. Holy shit. So the idea that people are going to time travel to the moment of when you die to perfectly preserve your brain and then replace it with a replica. How? Send tiny robots back in time. A nanorobot could be sent several billion years before now, where it could secretly replicate and sow nanotech within all living beings without affecting the course of history. I'm literally dizzy from reading this. At the moment of death, think about all the things that have died on this planet, billions and billions of creatures, trillions and quadrillions of nanorobots could be activated to collect data about the brain and preserve it in somewhere until its future resurrection. Thus, there would be no need for forward time travel. You want to know something? You want to know what, man? I think we're just so afraid of death. We're afraid of this thing that we don't fucking understand. We do not understand. It scares the shit out of us, and we have to come up with these. That's what, and I mean, really, that's where the soul comes from, is it not? I hate to say this. I want to believe that there's more to the soul, but is the soul just a human being's way of being able to cope with the futile reality that we're all going to fucking die? And like, part of me wonders, like, do I want my brain downloaded as a copy into a computer? And a part of me would think yes, and a part of me thinks no. Like, what kind of hell would that be? And it wouldn't be me. that, you know, we all get one life and we all get a chance to fucking do this thing. And then the thing fucking ends. There has to be a period. That's part of it, you know, especially if it's in cycles, right? Like if it's cycles, if there's more, there might be more to this. There might be more after this. Who fucking knows? You're going to disturb that the natural order of things because you want to try to extend this. I just don't, as much as I would want to, I also think that like it's ultimately necessary. We all have to experience it. Fuck, man. It's to be self-aware is so fucking terrifying. Because you know what? That the squirrel that woke up this morning and didn't know it was going to be fucking street. Although the same thing happens to human beings all the time too. It's just the idea that like, oh God, it's so fucking crazy, dude. It really is. It really, really fucking is. Chris says, thanks, Jeff. Right when I'm winding down for the eve, my brain going to be on overload all night going down the rabbit hole. I'm sorry, Chris. It's just the way it is. Aaron says being dead sucks, but being undead would rule. Aaron, you don't know what either would be like, so I don't know how you can weigh in on this. Yeah, exactly. We were talking about RoboCop earlier. Chuck says, like, where were you before you were born? When does conscious begin or does it ever end? You know, there's a song by a band called Bad Nerves. I've been talking a lot about the Bad Nerves lately, and I loved what they say in this lyric. They say, it's a song called Dreaming. As I lie in my bed, dreaming forever, dead, but my love outlived me. I'm a line in your head, living like the wave, like after the something. Don't want to be dead like you. Don't want to be dead. But I love that. As I lie in my bed, dreaming forever, dead, but my love outlived me. That's what I think about. That's what gives me some kind of peace, you know? This idea that, like, you know, you die. And I put that into my fucking script, that script I was writing. It's like, you know, maybe our dreaming is just a way for our brains to prepare, or our souls or our minds. Dreaming is we're building a place for our minds to go when our body isn't there anymore. So that, and you know, maybe if your death is really violent, or maybe if you just suddenly cease to exist, maybe you don't get that. Maybe if you shed the body naturally, you know, I think about my Nana who spent about a year dying. She wasn't dying. She died in like the last, you know, couple of days of her life, right? She was starting to really die. But she was 91 and she just started to slowly shed. She was I saw it as shedding. She went really inside of herself and she got really right with herself and just sort of her mind and this, that, and the other. She was preparing to leave her body. That's what was happening. And so perhaps, like, if we can hopefully go in this really kind of gentle way, she died in her sleep. Dave Street died in his sleep. If you're afforded such a luxury, if you're afforded this chance to die in your sleep, that you just simply shuffle loose the mortal coil and you transcend, perhaps your mind goes to that place where the consciousness goes, what I was talking about earlier, you know? Amy says, I think coming back from the dead would be hell on earth. Imagine the agony. Did you see Deadly Friend? I think, to be honest, Amy, not only do I agree with you, but like for me, watching movies about the undead now, this is the ultimate body horror. This is body horror. To be alive in a body that's rotting, like I can't even comprehend. I can't even comprehend the idea of decaying, like that you're running out of time. There's a movie called Dead Heat. It's a comedy, buddy comedy, cop comedy, sort of weird genre film with Vincent Price, Treat Williams, and Joe Piscopo. And I highly recommend everybody go check it out if you haven't seen it. But they're on like man, like the way that they fucking rot in that movie, it's so fucking scary, man. So it would be hell on earth if you were resurrected in that kind of way. If you were actually brought back to life, like when we say, is resurrection possible, coming back from the dead? If I'm referring to like actually being legally alive, like actually alive as I am right now, right? Like, so if one were to die and then come back and be alive in the flesh, where you're not rotting, where you're not decomposing, where you're not craving human flesh, that's why a movie like Return of the Living Dead, I'll tell you, I've talked a lot about Return of the Living Dead on my channel, done a lot of shows about Return of the Living Dead, but the more I watch, the older I get and the more I watch Return of the Living Dead, the fucking scarier it becomes, man. The paper goes on to outline some more resurrection methods, including ones that involve parallel worlds, aliens, and clones, along with good old-fashioned possibility that God exists and one day he will resurrect us. In short, it's all extremely speculative. But the aim of the paper was to catalog known potential ways humans might be able to cheat death. And again, for me, where I'm going to bet my money is absolutely unequivocally on AI. AI supercomputer is going to figure out that shit. We're not going to figure it out. They'll figure it out. Chuck B says, you guys ever watch The Sopranos? That show had this sort of existential loneliness feeling to it. It had a lot to say about the human experience. I agree. Absolutely. Including the end, which is Tony gets, spoilers if you haven't seen The Sopranos, almost 30-year-old show. Turn this off right now. Tony gets whacked at the end and it just cuts to black. And that's it. There's nothing. Which to me is just terrifying. That's terrifying. In short, it's all extremely speculative, but the aim of the paper was to catalog known potential ways humans might be able to cheat death. For Turchin, that's not some far-off project. In addition to studying global risks and transhumanism, the Russian researcher heads the Immortality Roadmap, which, similar to the 2018 paper, outlines various ways in which we might someday achieve immortality. Imagine like being on the road to immortality, but not knowing you're never going to achieve it. But then there's that guy like somewhere down the road in the future who is like just fucking 3 strokes away from immortality. And he's just like, thanks, guys. Now he's got it. Would you even want to be immortal? You're going to watch everybody around you die. You're going to watch the earth change, become uninhabitable. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's also going to suck. Part of what makes this so wonderful is that it's not forever, right? Ultimately, I guess at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know about you guys, but like, I think about like certain times in my life where I was living my best life and I didn't even know it. And it was all a bubble. You know what I mean? Like it was just I was in a bubble. And one day that bubble burst. And I think back to those times and I'm like, wow, those were such great times, but they're over. And they had to end because you want to know something? If I was still that person that was living in that bubble in 2008, when I was like 22 years old, like I would hate to be that guy forever. I don't want to be that guy forever, even if it means I'm alive. I'm glad that, as challenging as things can be sometimes, I'm glad to be me now. As scary as it can be to be me now, when I think about getting older and yada, yada, yada. I don't know. Telescope says, no, God doesn't exist. There's a possibility of using technology to continue our consciousness, but we lose personhood with it. Thank you so much, Telescope, for just having all of the answers. Random YouTuber on the internet. There you go. God doesn't exist. How do you know, man? I'm not saying that God does exist, but I'm saying, how do you friggin' know? You don't know. You don't actually know. None of us know. I do like what John Lennon said, though. God, in the song God, he said, God is a concept by which we measure our pain. That's a fucking deep notion, you know. But that there's a fucking benevolent creator or a benevolent being greater than myself, I do believe that is possible. 100% possible. We definitely shit the joint up. That's right. Immortal Hulk Hogan. Yes, Amy, kind of like Death Becomes Her, which is a great fucking movie. Telescope says, I'm sympathetic to pantheism, but it's just a name and an identity. Pantheism? Man. Although it may take centuries before humans come close to digital immortality, Turchin believes that life extension technology could allow some modern people to survive long enough to see it happen. Want a shot at being among them? Beyond the obvious, like staying healthy, the immortality roadmap suggests that you start collecting extensive data on yourself, diaries, video recordings, DNA information, EEGs, complex creative objects, all of which could someday be used to digitally reconstruct your identity. But odds are you're not interested. I'm not. Although Turchin and other scientists are bent on finding ways to avoid death and extend life indefinitely, surveys repeatedly show that most people would not opt to live forever if given the choice. How about this? How about this? All right. Here's my Jerry Springer final thought on all this. And this is the truth. Your children, if you're able to have them, or if you've had them or whatever, your children are the genetic link of you, just in the way that you're the genetic link of your parents. I carry within myself some piece, some semblance of every one of my descendants who walked the earth before me. I am representative of some kind of immortality, and I've passed it on to my son and my daughter. And hopefully, God willing, knock on wood, that they too won't be the last in the chain, that they will pass it on. And that is the only true, any kind of semblance of immortality that we get at all on this fucking rock, you know, and that, you know, if memories are passed or transferred and you know, skills and things passed along the DNA from person to person, that will live on. And for those of us who don't have children, because some people don't have children, if you take someone on as a pupil, if you influence somebody in some way, shape, or form, you know, if your essence has rubbed off on them and then they transfer it to someone else, that's the way that you're going to be immortal, you know? And ultimately that we're made up of all this shit that's been around for fucking billions of years, and we'll return to it at some point too. So, all right, that's it. That's the end of my show. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about why grass is fascist. Yes, you heard correct. Have I lost my mind? I don't know. I've been missing doing these intellectual sort of, you know, deep dive shows. I really enjoyed this show. This was a good one. These ones are always good. We always have really good fucking sort of discussions on here. So, all right, without further ado, thank you so much. Peace, hair grease. We'll see you tomorrow night, where we're going to be talking about why grass is fascist. Hear me out. Just hear me out. I'm telling you, though. It's my hot take. It's not even a hot take because I didn't come up with it, but it's a little bit of my hot take. Grass is fucking psychotic, dude. What a psychotic notion. All right. Goodbye.